Oh, all right, we are back. Hey man, how you doing?
Pretty good. How have you
Yeah.
been?
Um, I've been better. I've been worse,
Yes.
but I've been better. Um, a good friend of mine has needed some psychiatric treatment. Um, and so I've spent quite a bit of time at the hospital the last few days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I did not get my word count yesterday, and I'm not even halfway there today. So after this session, I'll probably try to jump back in and get some more work done. We'll see. It's
Well, you're in
been
good company.
okay, good. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be encouraging that every time that I've done this, this has happened. Like
Mhm.
we're about to kind of that phase. That's why I was so adamant about like getting a hot start. It was because I knew that it would kind of set in and not go as well for at least like a period,
Yeah.
because that's been my experience. So whatever
Yeah.
you can get at the beginning is good.
Yeah, this is different from the swamp though, because like I'm still in I feel like I'm in the middle beginning. Like I haven't even really gotten to the end of Act 1 really with the project I'm working on. So it's a little discouraging to hit the wall, and at this point. But this is one of those things where I think we've talked about in the past where I think I'm going to fold some of the experiences I've had, just some of the life experiences and the thoughts that I've had into the work that I'm doing. Um, you know, and use it in some way, shape, or form in the project. Um, so
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's I think that's good to do.
but I mean, first and foremost, I'm just trying to be a good friend and just you know help out. So you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
I did think a little bit this past week about improvisational methods that have worked for me. I'm not going to get into the whole planning versus writing by the seat of your pants pseudo debate or whatever. Um,
Yeah, and
but
it is kind of a pseudo debate, huh?
yeah, it doesn't really strike me as a real thing. I think I don't know. If we were to list the number of books that have been written, just in a single kind of spurt of imagination or whatever, it's I can count books on a single hand that are worth reading. And one of them is like Jean Genet. It's like um so but I do think improvisation is important. I think it is a really key thing to get a grip on and to be able to improvise and to be able to write. So I was thinking about things that have worked for me in the past in this regard, and I think I'm going to wind up using some of them. In fact, I've already used one. Um, one of them. Have you ever played with Brian Eno's oblique strategies?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know who Brian Eno is, but this oblique strategies, I have no idea what that is.
So Brian Eno was all about ambient music, right? And
Mhm.
he's all and since the 70s, he's been researching self-generative music, like music, basically applications that would generate through artificial intelligence music worth listening to. And he now has them. Like you can buy Brian Eno apps on the App Store and listen to music that is always new. Um, and part of that was the development of these oblique strategies. And I actually have it as an app also on my phone. And you just pull it up. It's called Oblique. And like the one that I just got, I probably can't see it, but it says, "What's make what's perfect more human." And so many of them apply to music. But what I found is oftentimes there's stuff like that that's like, oh, I can do that just in the next few sentences or the next paragraph. Um, apply that strategy to what I'm writing about. Um, like I literally the other day I was working on a scene where a character was cooking, making lunch for an individual who was really hungry, and the Oblak strategy said was it was like do the dishes. And I was like, yeah, I forgot to have them do that. Makes sense. Like just in the course of the dialogue, move them into the kitchen and have some action around doing the dishes. Um and it worked. Like it worked. Um so I don't know. I've enjoyed using Oblak strategies through the years. It's made me just kind of more receptive to just kind of random inputs. Um, you know, not just from apps, but from reality as well. Have you, what kind of, I know this is kind of on, you know, to the point of improv, like, have there, is there ways that you improvise or things that have helped you with?
Well, yeah, I'm a very like improv is very uncomfortable to me.
Yeah.
I'm a like, what do they call it? I'm an ivory tower writer.
Okay.
I
What
want
does
to be
that
like
mean?
locked. Well, I want to be locked away in my little room where the world doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
And I like, I think it has to do with control. Really, what it's about is control. It's about not having things that come in and upset what is going on. I want everything to be controlled by me, done for a reason. Nothing is random. Nothing is because of an intrusion that just had to kind of like be dealt with the way like the world is.
Yeah.
Um, it's all designed by me. It's kind of like the Platonic forms, the ideal. My serial killer is the ideal serial killer. Like,
You're making me think about Raymond Chandler and how he would sit and critique like film noir and be like, that's a really terrible way to murder someone. Here's how I would do it, you know. Um I
yeah, I mean, I honestly, whenever I talk about this, I spend a lot more time defending it than I spend taking it apart because it's kind of popular to take it apart. Like, we live in a kind of moment that is very anti the ivory tower rider. Um,
hmm.
for reasons. I'm not blind to like the problems of it being that way. But I think
I do think
it has its virtues too, and we are blind to its virtues.
yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that's part of this. One of the strengths of the form is that just in engaging with literature, reading a book, you're entering into a more contemplative space in a society that seems to be against contemplative action, you know. So I think reading is countercultural right now. Um, I mean, reading meaningfully, I think reading text is completely the moment we're in, but um, reading a story and trying to suss out the deeper meanings of it. Like I've been reading my boys Mark Twain recently, and I think some of their teachers at school think I'm insane for doing that. Um, but that's a different conversation. I am curious what, like within that ivory tower rarefied space, which by the way is a space that Brian Eno would appreciate. That is the space in which ambient music is made, you know. Um, have you found improvisational things that you do? Are there like so here's an example of one that I think about for that ivory tower space is like Salvador Dali, the key thing. You know what I'm talking about? Where he would fall
Oh,
asleep and Dali would he would be in that space, in that ivory tower space, that rarefied space. And if he came kind of to the end of his vision or the artistic moment that he was in, he would fall asleep in a chair with a key in his hand on a hardwood floor. And when he fell asleep completely and his hand relaxed, the key would drop, and the sound of the key striking the hardwood floor would wake him up, and he would immediately begin painting again. Which I think that is that's an artistic improvisation to play with the serotonin levels in your brain or whatever. So I'm curious if there are so examples would be also like writing at a different time of day or those types of things that introduce just a slightly different chemistry into the mix or what have you.
Yeah, I guess I don't think about it that way, but I do like when I kind of stagnate and not during NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is just like the grace of NaNoWriMo, the point of NaNoWriMo is to be uncomfortable for me.
Huh.
Because I'm a very kind of slow, deliberate writer, naturally. And you can't write 50,000 words in a month being slow and deliberate. You've got to not be what you naturally are in order to do it. It's about trying, it's about like having an experience that is other, is the entire point of doing it, you know? For me, I'm not saying that is what it needs to be for everybody, but for me, it is like, here's the way that I am, and here's a thing that kind of forces you to be pretty much the opposite of that.
Well, then it sounds like you're actually making a really good argument for improvising some. Like, what if you wrote an address tomorrow? Have you ever thought about that? Like, I wrote an entire story in a dress just to see how it changed the way I felt about my body and myself. Um, I think
Like
there's like
wearing it,
little
you mean like wearing a dress?
wearing a
Or,
dress.
okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if you were saying a dress or an address.
No, wearing a dress.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
like changing where I write, changing what I'm wearing while I write. Like I got into a really big overall kick about a month ago just because I was curious what writing in overalls would feel like, and I really liked it. Um, but uh, yeah, I don't know. Just there's that once you get to that place where you're comfortable in a space, like introducing slight kind of intentional changes. Like one of the things that I think of like in improv comedy, Amy Pollard talks about how you should always like practice like yes please, like yes, and like never say no in improv comedy. It's always yes, and did you see this happen, and yes, it's always a positive, like you're always trying to improvise on whatever the statement the person threw down in front of you.
Yeah.
But I think in fiction writing and in movies, like an improvisational version of that is like this like rule: foil, 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 like always foil everything, like never let anyone do anything easily, you know? And I think it becomes improvisational at some point where you're just like throwing in every possible, you know, blockage to the character. Like all they're trying to do is buy a plane ticket. You know what I mean? And you've got dogs barking at them, and then the credit card machine isn't working, and then the gate agent like accuses them of being, their former lover or something. Like so it's just this constant kind of like foiling process. Like they should never be able just to walk up to the counter and buy a bus ticket, you know. Um
Yeah, and like on the level of the scene, I think that is great. Like there's different ways of dealing with the way that conflict needs to come into a story when you're thinking kind of like macro scale with the big arc, and then when you're
yeah.
thinking just like in this scene, here's where it starts, here's where I need it to end. There needs to be a reversal somewhere in between, or else why is this a scene, right? I need to get them from here to there. I need to do this kind of small plot step.
Mm.
And I need some things to kind of like mess with that. I feel like that, what you were just talking about is more on that level. It's not like a big kind of in the big sense of story, it's in the small sense of the scene.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, there's
in a sense, the micro has to mirror the macro, as above, so below. You know,
spoken like a good alchemist.
right, yeah,
Um,
that's exactly what I was doing.
yeah. So unfortunately, that's time. But you've given me, I think, what I needed to hear. I did need to be reminded of that need for reversal in every scene. I feel like the scene that I'm in has kind of stagnated for just the reason that you talked about. So I'm glad that you reminded me of that. Well, man, have a good evening. Um, I mean, I didn't want to cut you off. I mean, if there is another like burning thought on your mind.
No, just to add to that, I'll say that like these things, like that a scene needs to have a reversal, those are things that properly belong to revision. They're not things that you should be worrying about when you're trying to write 50,000 words in 30 days. So be nice to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
But those are things when you come back and look at what you've written next month or in January, maybe.
Hmm.
Those are the kind of things to be like, when I look at each scene, I need to make sure that there's a reversal, you know.
Hmm.
But right now, sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. And just keep plowing.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. Yeah, I think there's something that's supposed to be happening in this scene. I'm just not exactly sure what it is. It's B plot stuff anyways, so it doesn't really matter.
And don't bog down in it. Keep
Yeah.
keep moving forward. And I you may have different goals than mine, but I I like NaNoWriMo is not even worth doing if I can't come out of it with a full arc,
Hmm.
a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so if you're maybe you're doing something different, but if you're doing the same thing, then it is catastrophe to bog down.
Hmm. Yeah, I do think we have slightly different goals, but we can talk about that on Thursday. But man, everything you
Okay,
said
yeah, that's fine.
super helpful. Well, have a good night. I'll see you Thursday.
Yep.